Planning Board meeting will now come to order. Could I have a roll call?
John Eichman.
Michael O'Brien.
Lori G.
John Cutler.
Craig Smith.
And if everyone would join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. And again, I apologize for getting started a few minutes late here. Hopefully, everybody has made it safely through all of our storms. I understand we have a few board members. The reason you see a couple empty seats up here, we have a few board members stuck in traffic due to the road closures in the southern part of the counties. We have two upcoming meeting dates, one on June 19th and the other on July 17th. Again, we have meetings every third Tuesday of the month, and if necessary, we can schedule an additional meeting on the first Tuesday of the month. And we have approval of minutes from February 20th and March 20th on our agenda, so bear with me. Let's see. So for February 20th, Michael, you were here, John Cutler, Craig, and John. We were all here. So do I have a motion to approve the minutes of February 20th?
So moved.
I have a
Second.
motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Great. And for the 20th, March 20th, sorry, bear with me. We've got again, John, Craig, we were, Michael, you were here too. Okay, great. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of March 20th?
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, great. I am caught up, Pam.
Wow, we gotta write that on the
Woohoo.
calendar.
All right, our first item tonight is bond reductions. We have two. The first one is for Hopewell Glen Phase 4 performance bond, requesting a change from, give or take, 1.2 million down to, I think, is that their 20% level, the 458,000?
Yes.
And Scott, I know you've had a chance to review the information that's been submitted.
Yes.
Any concerns?
No, we're adequately covered at the 458,200.
Okay, so do I have a motion to reduce the bond for
So
Hopewell
moved.
Glen?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Thank you. And Scott, our second one is a Saxon Woods performance bond, a reduction from 718,000. Again, is it to the 20% level, the 215.6? Or is it still above the 20%?
I think this one's above the 20%.
Okay.
Yeah.
So an interim reduction to 215,000.
And
Any,
just-
oh,
This is- question is-
215,600.
The 20% is the original amount of the bond, right? Because, look.
20% would be
this one-
20% of
this is
the original bond amount. That's
Okay.
the 20%.
Because the Toll Brothers one, this is the second reduction, this is the first.
Well, they can have multiple reductions to get down to that 20%.
Right.
Yeah.
That was what I'm saying.
Okay.
But the 20% holds to the original.
Is the bottom.
Thank you.
That's the bottom line. Yes.
okay. So again, for
Yes, and we
Saxon,
reviewed this, yes.
any issues with it, Scott, or we're okay?
We're okay.
All right. Do I have a motion to approve the reduction of the Saxon Woods performance bond to 215,600?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that motion also carries. Thank you. And our next item on the agenda tonight is a discussion for the Hopewell Sports Dome site plan on Route 52.
Chris, which file do I need to pull up?
Yeah, I had brought it up.
Good evening, Chairwoman and members of the board. My name is Christopher Lapine with the Chazen Companies, representing the applicant, the Hopewell Sports Dome, this evening. The owners wish they could be here this evening. They have a couple downed trees, which is prohibiting them from traveling here. They did ask if I could contact them and patch them in via a cell phone, if that's something that you would allow.
I don't mind that, we just can't capture comments from them for a meeting, but if they want to listen,
Okay.
I understand there's some weather issues, and they're probably stuck in a vehicle somewhere, so that's fine.
That'd be great.
I know it's a little bit of an unusual situation, but,
The bat phone.
yeah.
Hey Denise, how are you? It's Chris Lapine. I'm here at the planning board right now. Hey, we're going to let you listen in, and, okay. So, from the last time we were here at the planning board, we had made a couple of changes to our site plan. Some of the changes which are currently shown on our site plan have gone further modifications since we submitted it based on dialogue we had with the DOT. So what I'll first start off with is what additional changes we made which aren't being overridden or modified from discussions with the DOT. So we were asked to, along this side, put in a metal guide rail along this portion of Southgate Drive, one that meets the DOT standard, because eventually, sometime in the near future, this particular section of the road would be dedicated to the town, and you'd have a guide rail that meets the DOT standards, as opposed to the wooden guide rails that the Sports Dome have for their private use on their site.
Right, and that's a request from the DOT for
That was a
South?
request from the town.
From the
That was
town?
ours,
From the
yeah.
town.
Okay,
Because you have fields that are right
was
there
gonna
off
say, 'cause
that
that's
edge
not
of
the
the road,
state
and
road,
it drops
okay.
off, so I mean, a car could drive off onto the field, so.
sure.
We had sections of the stormwater management basin along the front portions adjacent to Route 52, where we had both guide rail and a post and rail fence. And the post and rail fence was joining the guide rail. What we've done is we've completely encapsulated this in a post and rail fence, and then we have the guide rail kind of out on this section here where the slope's a little steep, not necessarily in the DOT right away, but we incorporated that for safety reasons.
So are you saying you're going to have the metal guide rail and a post and rail for the run along 52?
Correct, for a portion of this here, in this area here. And this is a wooden guide rail on
You
our
won't
site.
have metal on 52.
No, we have wooden internally to our site in that area.
They're outside the right-of-way.
We're
so they
outside
don't-
the right-of-way
they don't need
there.
metal.
So
Okay. Oh, I thought you said you were putting a standard guide
that's
rail
along Southgate Drive right here,
Okay.
we're doing that.
Okay,
But you are putting the wood rail also on the service road to replace what was taken down?
Yes, we had that on our plans originally.
Okay.
We've provided the temporary lighting in the photometric plan for that lighting in the rear parking lot area. That's on a separate sheet, but just so everybody's aware, there was a request for us to provide you cut sheets of that and what the photometrics were for those particular areas.
is that the permanent lighting or the temporary lighting?
Temporary lighting.
The temporary lighting, that's the
temporary
post.
overflow, Correct.
We wanted to have a clear record
Yeah.
of the number of lights that would be required and where they would be placed, and
Right.
so we knew ahead of time.
And I know that package, I think, included the actual picture of the lights themselves. Were they acceptable? They looked pretty standard to me, but they were tall enough and we were fine with the photometrics?
Yes, and I believe there's expect to be 11 at each parking lot.
Okay.
There was a misunderstanding as to the lighting. We did show lighting along the west side of the facility, along all the walkways being lit. Recent correspondence, there is a good point that was brought up, that in the event of an emergency, and we have emergency exit doors in the rear, and this is an evening event, there is no lighting in the back of the dome. So one of the things we talked about last week was the placement of some lighting back here. We have lighting above the door, but that's not necessarily enough in the event of an emergency, and people need to either go to the west or east of this. So we will be incorporating some additional lighting here, similar in poles to what we have on the site as well. But that's something that's, go ahead.
Chris, is that, like, all the walkways will be lit? Is that?
Yes, all the sidewalks here will be lit now.
Okay.
And we've, you saw the modification we made, we've come in with some different lighting here so that we can illuminate the walkways in the front. Just so everybody's aware, there's the concrete sidewalk, and then there's the snowdrop area, which is adjacent to that, which in some cases goes anywhere from 10 to 20 feet. That 10 to 20 feet is not completely illuminated. The intent is that's going to be storing snow at times during the winter conditions, but the actual walkway for which people will be traversing will be lit.
just, is the winter gonna be like the peak time for this? I mean, is that, I would think that,
I think for the, it's, my gut instinct would say, Denise, can you answer that?
I had a hard time hearing the.
Will the
Yeah,
winter,
Chris, we have to be, we need only people present in the room to make comments, so.
so, I guess in terms of whether or not it'll be peak, I couldn't tell you if it's going to be peak.
Okay.
A lot of people play baseball during the summer, and, I've seen, my daughter has played both in the Dome during the winter and in the Dome during the summer. There's more people there during the summer, because
Okay.
people are traveling because of
Okay.
the weather conditions aren't, but
But the intention is this is a year-round
This is a
facility.
year-round
so-
facility.
year-round, but I was just
Yeah.
curious if, like, there was a slack period in the winter or that kind of thing. I'm just thinking in terms of snow storage and the rest of that, the answer is no, it's.
no, the intent is.
Okay, thank you. Sorry to.
No problem.
slide through.
I think the snow storage is temporary and just till you're able to remove it, right? It's not
Correct, that's the,
prolonged snow storage. It's
correct,
just-
you'll have there's a 10 to 20-foot drop zone, like, I don't know if, I went to school at Syracuse University, so I'm familiar with the Carrier Dome. You don't walk within 10 to 15 feet of the dome when it's snowing, because the snow slides right off the roof and hits the ground. And then following the snowstorm, they come and they, with a loader, they come and they pick up all the snow and they stockpile in a different area. So that's why I was saying, in terms of the area that's lit, it's the sidewalk, it's not the snow storage area that's being lit.
When you say you don't walk next to the dome when it's snowing, how do you know not to walk next to the dome? At the
Well-
Carrier Dome in Syracuse, how do you know not to?
Well, because, during the heavy snowstorms, the snow is falling.
You figure that out once it falls on you once, or?
Natural selection?
I saw it, I just knew from my visit up there when I walked the campus, I was told about it.
But is it signed? Is there anything to
There-
say
there was
hazardous
no-
area,
There was no
don't
signage.
stand
That's
there?
actually a good point, that,
Well, that's where I'm going with this. You're saying you know enough, but how do you know until you maybe find out the hard way that you shouldn't be walking there?
That's a valid point, and it's probably a good idea to put some signs
Okay.
for that.
Even if they're just there during
Yeah.
the snow season, that's fine.
Maybe they could be temporary signs during the winter, and then we can remove them during the summer.
Gotcha.
Can I ask just a quick question, Chris, just for purposes? The metal, all the guide rail stuff is already shown on the plan,
Yes.
correct? Okay. And then, but the lights along the back of the dome, is that now shown on the plan?
These lights right here need to be shown on the plan. They're
Okay, so
currently
they
not
have,
shown.
okay, so they're not, I just want to make notes of which is, what we need to add to the plan and what is already on it.
This was the one we misunderstood. We did all the lighting here and here. We just didn't have the lighting at this point.
So we don't have a plan that shows that yet?
We don't have a plan that shows the lighting in the back of the facility.
This plan, Chris, what's the date on this place? This the date?
This is the 4/3,
Okay.
2018 set.
Okay. And Michelle, that's the most recent one that you've seen, and Scott? Okay.
Now, the other discussion we had was you were going to gate this off or somehow barricade it off so you just don't get regular pedestrian, but yet it has to be usable for egress in the case of emergency.
Yeah, so one of the things we spoke about was using a temporary barrier or barricade, something you see at maybe a concert or something, that would be placed here for when people are walking from the overflow area to get to the dome, so that nobody inadvertently comes through the back door through one of the emergency access points. So that'll be temporary
You could have a
blocked off.
sign on it with an arrow pointing to the entrance type.
We're going to, this is part of the signage we talked about is, entryway to the dome. We would have that there.
You'd have it on both ends.
I'd have it here, and I'd have it here, and I'd probably have a sign here that says, straightforward for entryway to the dome.
So there's going to be a note or something on the plan or, some kind of,
My thought was to
Reference
put
to
it
that.
with, this application, we included the signage schedule for where all the overflow parking was. I want to incorporate it into that plan so that that signage is part of the overall plan.
signage and barricade, yeah.
Yep. There was also a request in this particular area here to add 4 more catch basins on Southgate Drive, which we did. We had those long runs that were flowing into the air gate enclosure here, so we added those additional catch basins.
Can I, I'm sorry, I'm going to take you back to just the prior one.
Sure.
You said you needed to put up some type of barricade and signage to prevent pedestrians from entering through the rear exit doors?
Correct.
How would they get into those doors? Do you plan on having them open during events?
We
or-
don't, but we would prefer individuals not walk along the rear of the facility, for example, in back of the inflation units. So we just want to circulate them to the front of the dome as opposed to coming all the way around the dome.
Okay,
There's no reason why they should be walking in the rear of here, and only in event of emergency.
okay,
It's just an additional precautionary measure.
okay. And just to, and I'm sorry to ask, you have parking on site for about 250, is that correct?
273, I believe is the
270,
number.
give or take, okay. So anything from 270 up to 1,000 will fit in your overflow parking?
Overflow parking area.
And then events which will have over 1,000 attendees, you're going to file a special permit with the town, and you'll have a different plan for those?
Correct, they have to go to the town board to demonstrate where all the off-site parking is and
Okay.
means of traffic control and police presence.
Okay, okay. So for the 250 to 1,000, where you're going to use the off-site parking, Michelle, I think we had talked last discussion about making sure we have in hand a plan that says, here's generally, I know you've shown us where the temporary lighting would go, but what about folks that are directing traffic and things like that? Do we have anything in hand that kind of gives us a feel for what we should expect to see on your site so that traffic's managed, say if there's 900 people coming?
Yeah,
or 900 cars?
let me bring up a plan.
Okay. And Michelle, have you had a chance to review what?
No, I haven't seen what he's showing, but
Okay.
I added that condition in number 32
Okay.
for that, just so you know, similar, and we can tweak it.
Okay.
So we prepared two plans in our April submittal, which included directional signage for clientele entering the site from either access point. It'll direct them in terms of employee. We have employee parking back here. It'll direct you to overflow parking in this direction here or over here, and then we'll direct you to parking in front of the dome as well. It gives you an idea of where the front entrance is.
With
to the dome.
signage or with people?
With signage.
Okay.
With signage. We've got the different types of signs on the right-hand side of our drawing here, and it gives you an idea of everything that's on there, and we have them identified in terms of locations throughout the site. There are some good input and dialogue we had on this from the town, engineer Scott and Michelle, which for cars coming up and down these front aisles, there probably should be signage at each point along the aisles looking towards Route
To
52.
point you to overflow if you're not
Yeah,
finding a
so-
spot, gotcha.
So right now, we only have them at this location here and here, so you've got to turn on to here and you're not really sure. So I think we can certainly refine this to improve what we presented to you initially, and I have all their comments here to make this a better product for you.
Okay. And I thought I remembered on the west side, you were going to have bus parking. Is that still correct when it's buses
Correct.
coming in?
We
Okay.
have the bus drop-off area here that's labeled, and the signage here for bus drop-off.
Okay.
And then we have the bus storage in the back.
Okay. Okay. And you also have a place for cars to drop off kids? Or would they also use the bus drop-off?
They could probably either use the bus drop-off, or in some cases, they're probably going to be dropping off in the front of the building.
Okay, and there's space there if a car stops for another car to get by? It's,
Yeah, this kind of, if you look at this, there's kind of this little indent here with the curb line.
okay. Okay. So that's signage. But I'm asking, are you going to have people directing traffic? Are you going to have people managing cars and pedestrians all walking in the same place?
I think they're going to have individuals, and we spoke to this. I don't think they'll be there on an everyday basis. You have some days where there's not going to be events. It's going to be more of
I'm
a
talking about
practicing.
with larger events.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about your day-to-day.
They'll have people probably at a focal point here, a focal point over here, one that directs you. If, for example, if we know that the front parking is overflow or is full, they'll probably be here directing you to come to the overflow parking on the east side of the site.
Okay.
I can give you an estimate of where I think people will be standing. It depends on the number of people you're going to expect as well. If you're only expecting maybe up to 400 participants, because say you have say you got 8 teams that show up for a small tournament, you might not have as many as 16 teams coming, but it would be kind of a conceptual, guess at where people would be located. But in an ideal world, I can just show you, if you want, just some typical locations where people would be present.
Okay.
If
Michelle, I
that's-
guess, is this, we had asked for some sort of kind of event plan. Is that what you're thinking,
Well,
or?
I mean, it's called, typically, we call it a traffic management plan, and there's a range of what that means, basically, but we just want some certainty that they're going to be handling traffic in a certain way when the events get of a certain size. Like, if an event is, 500 cars, we would have someone stationed here, and we would have signs to, as soon as the parking lot's full, we'll put a sign out that said the parking lot is full, and they must be directed to the overflow parking. Just some sort of narrative that we can then enforce in case there's issues during a large event. We just need to understand what is supposed to be happening. And then, obviously that may need to be tweaked after it's in operation, but
Sure.
at least we have something written down, what they're saying, some sort of narrative.
Okay.
The other thing we talked about is having a site plan, a parking lot plan, maybe multiple plans, so that people know, are they in parking lot A, B, C, and where these parking lots are. Because if you drive to the site and you see this parking in the front, you don't realize that there's remote satellite parking elsewhere, and on what side.
Or
of
you
the
might
dome.
forget which lot you parked in.
You just drove 3 hours at 6 o'clock in the morning to get here, and you're just dropping your kid off in a rush, and where am I parked? So maybe, like at the Galleria, you are here, and these are the parking lots, and, because, I think until a person becomes acclimated with it, it could be confusing.
Okay.
And that could be, incorporated somehow into their traffic management, Maybe in the morning, they start by filling parking lot A, and when that gets full, they go to B, and then after that, it's what it is after that.
Okay.
They'll need that ultimately anyway for their larger event. That'll be something they can build upon. When
For the
they come
events
for-
over 1,000 where they have to
Yeah,
apply,
yeah.
right?
So they'll already have, I think, the basis to build upon that.
Okay.
Yeah, so what we're thinking for the mapping that we were just discussing, I was going to touch upon that, is, for example, where you have the overflow parking in this location, you have a set of stairs coming down, and you have a set of stairs coming down here, we would have kind of a sign here. You are here, here is where the front entrance to the dome is, here's field 3, field 4, field 1, field 2, primary parking, employee parking, just to kind of give everybody a feel, as Scott was alluding to, something you'd see at a Galleria if you were in kind of the food court area.
Right.
So, and once again, the thought process being, put it here, here, probably one over here in the parking area where people are, and as we discussed, we'll probably have another one somewhere in this area in the front as well.
Okay.
Kind of like a wayfinding sign, if you want to call it, for simpler sakes.
Okay. Okay.
Just going to bring up the utility
That's
plan
fine.
for you.
Yep.
Just, Chris, one thing. I knew originally the openings in the dome were going to be bulkheaded, and there were going to be a limited amount of ingress and egress points. And if you can update us, I've heard rumor that maybe they're not going to be bulkheaded and they're going to be actual ingress or at least egress points from day one.
I can't comment on that. I haven't been the only points of ingress and egress that I knew of were here in the front of the dome. I don't know of any other
I
points.
know on
that-
the building plans, it showed them being blocked up, and they were going to,
You mean on the rear of the building?
no,
Or the-
you have to have X amount of entrances to have a large-scale event. And originally, they were going to just bulkhead and put block, fill them in with block, so that you really
Alright,
could,
now, the back entrance is not going
Yeah.
to, is going to be blocked. All of the emergency exit doors.
so the point is, before they could have 5,000 people, they were going to have to make modifications. The question is that still the case, or the way they're going to construct it now, could the day after they open, they apply for 5,000 people? Because they put doors in instead of putting the bulkheads in, so just
Yeah,
trying to get some clarity on that.
I think I could provide the clarity through Denise in a narrative response.
Okay.
I can't go into the level of detail that she was just talking about.
Okay.
Unless you want me to put her on speaker, because it's something I'm not familiar with, to be honest with you. There's changes.
I understand they had difficulty
Architecture.
getting here, but we have to stick with the
Yep.
folks in the
Yep,
room to
understood.
offer comment.
Understood.
Okay. So, Chris, you understand the question, though, is that
Yes.
we thought they were going to be blocked for the time being, and then at some point, they were going to be opened up when larger events would start to happen. But if those are going to be doors now, even if they're going to be locked doors or blocked doors, we just need to understand when the soonest you might start to have larger events might
Yeah.
happen.
They're locked from the inside, from what I
No,
understand.
they're locked, you can't enter them from the outside, but they're emergency exits.
If you don't mind, just
Yeah,
take
I
a
took
second and
those.
let her know that the reason we can't entertain her comment is that she's
Hey, Denise,
not in the room.
they can't entertain the comments, but we'll give them a narrative on it right now. All right?
Okay.
All right, thanks.
So Chris, what we're looking at here, I mean, there won't be large-scale events as part of this approval, right?
No, those have to be, they have to
They
apply
have
for a
to come-
permit from the town for
they have to
anything
come back
with
to the town
1,000 or
board.
more.
Okay,
And if the town board sends them here, then,
that's the new town foghorn.
gotcha.
Can we turn the vibration off on that?
No, I raised the point because you were going through updates and changes, and I think that's if that's the case, a change worth noting.
Okay.
And I'm not saying it's a bad thing, just so everybody's aware.
No, that's fair. We didn't have that understanding originally, and it's fine that it's a change. We just need to understand it and
Right.
see it. Okay. Chris, do you want to go back to the other drawing, and then let's just walk through any other changes you've made to the
By
plan?
other drawing, are you referring to the
The
utility plan?
original plan you had
Okay.
up. This, I think, was the parking sign plan. Scott, while Chris is changing the plan, that metal guide rail, is that already on the current set of plans, or is that, it's on, okay,
Yes, it's on.
okay. And the post and rail fence is already shown as we expected, okay.
Yes.
All right, so,
As I said, what's not shown is just the lighting in the rear here. We do have the signage plan. We just got comments on those, so we will modify those plans based on the comments we received on the signage.
okay.
I brought this plan back up for you.
Okay. Are there any other changes you want to walk us through since?
Oh, yeah,
last-
I was going to go over the utility plan.
Oh, okay, all right, that's fine, I'm sorry, go for it.
As we were talking about earlier, we added some additional catch basins in this location here and in this location here prior to the crosswalk coming across Southgate Drive. We also showed the location of a future water line along Southgate Drive, which would be dedicated to the town of East Fishkill.
Scott, have you reviewed that? Is it in,
Yeah, I went over it with Pete Cetera from Morris and Chris, and I think there's still some details that Chris has to work out. I mean, they were fine with the concept. It basically replaces the line that, as it turned out, fell in one of the detention basins. So it cleans that up, and we're just trying to make the best use of it as we can as it pertains to the dome site.
okay. So you have some additional technical detail you're adding to the plan for it?
Yeah, we, if you recall, this was the one that you had asked for additional right-of-way in the event that that line could be salvaged, and it couldn't be salvaged. So we're showing this on our plan. The client is committed to putting this in here, and we are, as we discussed, we're going to eliminate, probably going to eliminate the line on the other side and keep this.
And tap into this line instead.
Correct.
Yeah, so it's a similar scope of work, all in all. Have you had any further discussion with the health department as far as relocating the meter pit, or?
We haven't had further discussion with the health department yet. We were down to 3 comments from the health department.
You were debating whether you wanted to?
Yeah, and my thought process here was to get the approval of what the original design was and come back with a modification to the health department so that we can go through with site plan approval.
So what they're kind of showing now is a little extra pipe than I think is really necessary, which is fine. They can get their health department approval, and then, once the smoke settles, if they want to go back to the health department and amend it,
Yes.
we're fine with that, and if not, we'll accept it as drawn.
Okay.
Amend it with our consent,
Correct, yeah, and we'll fix that up.
Okay.
So if I can bring up a plan which discusses some of the modifications that's been talked about with DOT.
Okay.
I've
So
got-
is that something that's in-house at the planning office now, or is it something new for tonight?
It is new for tonight.
Okay.
It took place last Wednesday.
Okay.
And I just kind of want to share with you their thought process on where we are.
Sure.
I tried to give this some color, but I don't know how well I did here. So if you recall, during the original approval for the project, the applicant had some discussions with John Jay School, and they were going to place a sidewalk that was from their westernmost entrance, and that sidewalk was going to come down Auditorium Drive, cross, and come into the site here. This was going to have lighting along that corridor, coming all the way in. My understanding is this was originally discussed with the Department of Transportation back in 2013 and 14 when this all came to light. I hadn't been involved in that portion of the project. The DOT is taking a fresh look at this and the ongoing pedestrian circulation in this area right now. As you're aware, we have students from John Jay that are walking along the 52 corridor. And their perspective is they'd like to see a sidewalk that extends along the frontage of the entire property and then culminates at the westernmost access with 4 pedestrian grade signalization there. This would accommodate the individuals who are currently parking in the, at the soccer fields, town soccer fields, and it would provide a safe means of access for those individuals between the soccer field parking and the school. The other, it would provide also another means of access for students coming from the school to the dome, as opposed to the sidewalk coming along Auditorium Drive and into the site. The intent is that individuals would continue to walk along the sidewalk here, and there'd be a sidewalk that cuts through the conservation easement here, coming into the central portion of the dome here.
Did we
That's,
file the conservation easement with the subdivision?
yes.
Okay. Can we put a sidewalk in a conservation easement?
It depends on what the conservation easement says, and I'm not sure what the language is.
Are you familiar with it, Chris? Do you know?
Not off the top of my head, I think. I understood the intent was you couldn't put any buildings in there. I know you were allowing snow storage in the conservation easement area.
I'm not saying it doesn't make sense, I'm just,
Oh, no, Tom Wood and Steve Feinstein prepared that document.
okay.
Chris,
That base-
sorry?
Go ahead, Scott.
I'm just seeing that kind of for the first time, so I'm just saying that brings people then just basically into the parking lot?
Into the parking lot area, and what's,
Would you put a sidewalk in one of those aisles to,
that's where I was going with next, was where it brings you right into the parking lot area, one of those areas where we previously had a sidewalk, we would bring back to a sidewalk so that they can walk right up to the
Crosswalk,
front. Yeah, and a crosswalk.
So, not to be difficult here, but it sounds like the sidewalk plan really is more about getting kids from the soccer complex back to Jay, not so much bringing them over from Jay into the dome.
I think it's a combination of the two. I think right now, you have the individuals walking, students walking along the Route 52 corridor,
Every day, that's correct.
and I think the DOT is seeing this as an opportunity to address two items. One being to get students from John Jay to the Dome, and the other to get students from the off-site parking to John Jay in a safe manner. Now, I do want to add that at the time, the town had a commitment from the owners of the Flores station there. They were willing to put in a mid-block crosswalk, which the DOT has denied.
they've denied, but Greg Bentley's going to revisit it, he said.
He's going to, okay.
I spoke to him today.
All right, well, as of last Wednesday, it was still denied, but we all think it's in the best interest of not necessarily this project, but just in general in this area, based upon the fact that the kids are crossing in that area. Go ahead.
And that opinion factors in the fact that that brings them across that morning exit, directly across where all the buses and cars are exiting in the morning.
Well, you have students that are walking across the street here just to get to the Dunkin' Donuts facility.
I understand.
Yeah.
But I mean.
Most of them
those
do
are-
cross at the existing crosswalk by the light, though.
That's incidental and unplanned, but what we're talking about here is the DOT preference, you're telling me, is to bring those kids across, right across the main egress for the morning traffic. That, that gate, that's the special morning gate that they open.
DOT's preference is not to have a mid-block crosswalk, period.
Correct. That's their
Right.
preference.
Right, so they're coming right across,
What Mike's saying is that on the plan, that sidewalk's going to cross over the, what do they call it, west,
the morning
West
gate,
or
the
morning
morning
gate.
gate or whatever it is,
We're
that,
talking about as they walk parallel
From the
with
school,
52.
right.
You're talking about parallel
This-
50, you're not
this
talking about the
design.
Dunkin', okay,
I'm not talking about going across the street.
okay.
I'm talking about this new
Crossing the
route.
driveway.
This new route, admittedly, that, they're not going across the various driveways on the north side of 52, but there's a couple of doozies on the south side.
I think you're referring to this right turn lane that comes off into the school there.
No, I'm referring to, there's another gate that they open in the morning hours.
That's the one.
That's the one on the west side, correct?
Yeah, same one.
Where-
When you're
there's-
going
On the west side, yes.
So the DOT doesn't have based on our dialogue, and I can share this, they don't have a record of approving a right turn lane into that portion of John Jay. So they're not sure how that actually transpired over the years in terms of allowing a point of access or ingress at that. So,
but that doesn't mean that it's not happening.
I was going to say.
I'm just, I mean,
it's happening, but
and it's not invisible when you drive by that it's there,
And it
right?
wasn't
I
invisible
mean,
when they did it.
Yeah, I think from,
I'm not sure what to say about that, but,
I think what's being proposed now is better than what they currently have, which is no means of,
okay.
I mean, I've got
Well, I would agree,
videos I could show you as
having
well.
people use a sidewalk versus walk along the edge of Route 52 is certainly better, regardless of where that sidewalk is, you're correct.
And it's contiguous. Let's give, you know,
We have,
the other side is not,
The-
has this, you know, incomplete patches.
yeah, the kids, right now, you have students walking on both sides of the road.
Right.
As we monitor this on a daily basis. I mean, just today, you had them walking on both the north and the south side.
Right,
Right. Okay.
but, okay.
One of
If-
the other,
But if they want coffee, are they really going to cross over, walk along the south side, and then cross back over to get coffee before they come back to the high school? Or are they going to continue to walk along the north side? I'm just, I mean,
from the
just
student. from the student
realistically.
Perspective, there's a crosswalk at the east side of their campus,
Right,
Right.
which leads to a sidewalk on the opposite side of.
correct,
Which they can then continue up to the Dunkin' Donuts.
correct. And then if they're going
the
back
shortest
to their
path?
cars, are they crossing back over to the south side to do that, or are they going to keep walking where they walk today?
They'd have to,
I know this is not,
yeah, no.
this is the DOT issue, I'm
They-
sorry, it's,
theoretically, they'd have to walk from the east, they'd have to walk to the east to the
Yeah.
crosswalk. The other, let me just add one other thing. Greg Bentley from the DOT did reach out to the school district to talk to him about this ongoing issue. One of the things he did request was between the western and eastern access points on the campus, if they could do something temporary in terms of a sidewalk, even if it's asphalt, just so that there's a connection point between the two for continuity, as Michael was just discussing earlier.
okay.
Thank you.
Scott,
And-
It's being
don't-
taken under consideration, so.
And Scott, a crosswalk at, is it Lake
Lake Drive, yeah.
Lake
Drive
Drive.
would be still under consideration or still,
Well, the problem is because of that right turn lane into the school, that's a problem for DOT. DOT would want to shorten that right turn lane or have it shortened by someone, so that a car couldn't stop on 52, but a car could cut on the shoulder while somebody's walking. You know, they really want these crosswalks where it's just one lane in each direction.
okay,
So, I mean, they're going to go back and revisit it, but it may be cost prohibitive by the time they come up with a detail of what they want.
In that case, my understanding is that since that was never authorized or approved, that's just a shoulder. So it's just a matter of restriping that area, not necessarily, because it's just a shoulder of a road. They're not rebuilding anything.
Yeah, I don't know what they're going to come up with.
Thanks,
okay,
Chris.
so you're showing us the box up at Rothal,
Correct.
and you're showing us the south side sidewalk all the way along your property up through to the existing sidewalk that's on the east side of the school?
To the existing access drive.
The
They don't
existing
have a s-
access drive,
their s-
okay.
Their sidewalk. That's where Greg asked him about.
Asphalt, that's right, I'm sorry, you got it. So tell me what that's going to look like at night.
So there's been some back and forth on this. And right now, the existing sidewalks in this area are not lit. And we will acknowledge that originally this had lighting along its corridor coming into the site area.
Right.
The applicant has gone back and forth because there's some additional costs, obviously, with the extension of this sidewalk and the pedestrian signalization there. And I know there's been some give back as it relates to the elimination of the cattle crossing. But they are looking at ways of trying to do this economically feasible. One of the things that they've thought of, and it was mentioned by Mr. Bentley, was because there are currently some utility poles along this corridor here, about possibly looking at the opportunity of leasing lights from Central Hudson that shine down and illuminate the sidewalk area.
That would be owned by the applicant?
They may be owned by...
Or leased by, I'm sorry, you mean
they-
leased
they
by
may
the
be-
applicant?
Correct,
Okay,
unless the town creates some sort of a lighting district here at a later date where everybody shares in those costs. I don't...
I think it was DOT's position that if those lights exist in the right-of-way, even though they're on Central Hudson poles, that the town's still going to have to enter into an agreement, a lighting agreement with DOT.
Yeah, the poles are in the right-of-way.
okay. So I'm not clear, are we saying that the town would have to lease or own the lights, or that the applicant would lease or own the lights?
My understanding is the agreement would be between the DOT, there's kind of two different agreements. There's one, we have to have an agreement with DOT to allow the lights to be in their right-of-way. That's
Fair
one
enough.
agreement.
Sure.
And then there's going to be another agreement with Central Hudson that speaks to who pays for those lights. So there's two different agreements there that we're talking about.
Okay, and is that the lease you're referring to, that the applicant would take on to pay for the lights,
To
but the...
pay to lease the lights and the power to run the lights.
Okay. Are the poles, I'm not, I haven't paid attention to them, but are...
I can...
Sure.
I took a photo.
Okay, great. Thanks, Scott. Yeah, that one.
That's better.
Gives you an idea.
So just show me where the sidewalk itself would be situated.
So the DOT wants their sidewalk 5 feet off the curb line.
Okay.
So that would be used as a snow shelf when they plow.
Okay,
Then the sidewalk would start here, and it would be 5 feet wide going along this corridor here.
okay. So
would have
so
to
it would be
meander, obviously.
between the poles and the road?
Exactly.
Okay.
And we would meander down here as we go to the eastern portion.
Got
One
it.
thing we would look at is trying to see about putting lights on these poles here that could illuminate the sidewalk. Scott brought up a good point. We got to look at this from a photometric standpoint.
Sure.
I absolutely agree. And we also have to look at it from what Central Hudson has available. You can't go and pick a Musco light and put it out in a pole. It's only what Central Hudson has available, because they're going to be maintaining these lights
So
as
I
well.
know
think
this
the
meeting with the
lights-
DOT only happened within the last couple of days. Have you talked to Central Hudson at all to see what they're,
The Central Hudson theory came up in the last 24 hours.
got it, okay?
And just, I think the lights would have to be up pretty high because the spacing between the poles is pretty distant. So in order to get the entire length of the sidewalk between the poles, they'd probably have to be at a sizable height, which goes to the photometrics, because you could have glare.
And the DOT's not going to want to have glare out into the road. They're not going to want
Correct.
them affecting the motorists.
Okay.
So it's called-
But I know that there can be shielded lighting, so theoretically, if we could work with Central Hudson to find lighting that could shield from motorists but illuminate the sidewalk directly
Correct.
below.
We have to do an investigation of what they have available and whether or not
Okay.
it's feasible. That's one of the, we're trying to reach a compromise here
Yep.
with something that's economically feasible and at the same time still provides illumination before we go down the path of light poles down the whole corridor, if this is something that may
Okay,
work out.
But Chris, just to confirm, no trees would have to be removed. The trees could
No.
all stay.
No, we can't.
yeah, because the sidewalk's going to be in the right of, it's going to be up above, to the north of the poles.
You're not allowing, that was part of the conservation.
No, that's what I was hoping,
Yeah.
yeah. I just wanted to make sure.
And then you're bringing in a spur into your parking lot. I'm assuming your parking lot, Michelle, we've already looked at the photometrics for the parking lot, but for the spur that you're bringing down, you need to look at lighting for that
We'd
as
have to
well.
put some lighting along that corridor.
Okay, all right.
And that would feed off of our lighting within the parking lot.
Okay, but I'm assuming there's no poles, so those you'd be installing something?
We'd have to install something there.
Okay.
And then,
Does Central Hudson, another question you have to ask is, I mean, Do we want these things lit from dusk to dawn, or just till 11 o'clock at night?
Well, I think we have the operating hours on file for the site, so I would think at least till the end of, maybe half an hour past their operating hours or
Because that's
something
another
like that.
question for Central
We have-
Hudson. When it's your light, you can program it, but I don't know once you put that light on that pole, whether it's just a dusk to dawn light, or you can program times.
It's
or not.
definitely a question that you would want to ask, because you don't want to leave them on if you don't have to. Okay. Okay.
I mean, the lights that you put on that spur, you'll be able to have a clock on those, I imagine.
It's also going to get a little tight on the turn lane.
Yeah.
You're talking about right here? In that area?
Well, I think this sidewalk would just jog and stay the same distance from the curb, right? It would have to.
Yeah, I think we can, looking at this, we laid it in, and we're probably about 2 or 3 feet away from that pole over here with the sidewalk.
Okay.
That was on that last plan that I had up for the board.
Okay. All right. Any other questions on the sidewalks or any other changes to the sidewalks on the site?
That's the extent of the changes for the sidewalks on the site.
Okay, so this is on a plan you're presenting to us just tonight, so our professionals haven't had a chance to look at it?
Correct.
It sounds like you haven't had a chance to fully flesh it out with the lighting and things like that.
Correct. The lighting needs to be flushed out. I think I got the route flushed out. I presented that. I came in last Friday once following our meeting with the DOT, so I could present the DOT's thought process here so that we can kind of coordinate this thing going forward.
Okay.
But I think I can honestly say that this route here is set, and from the DOT's perspective, this is their desired route.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. There were a couple other things that I had, and I think, Michelle, you may have had a couple other things, other board members may, but the first one was, you had given us the calculation of the soil to be removed from the site, but I don't think we had the plan yet for the truck traffic and the hours of operation, sediment control, that sort of thing, dust control. Do we have a plan for that now, and was it acceptable?
We had
We
erosion.
just had total volume, but I don't think they have an actual disposal plan, and I would suggest that that be deferred, and they should maybe come in at a later date and discuss that once they get their arms around it, because I don't think they have a home for the material yet, so I don't know how they would gauge the rate at which.
So that's going to be a separate permit that we handle
Or the
outside
route.
of
I
any
think they
changes
should-
right now?
I think once they get their
Okay.
handle on it, they should come back and discuss that.
I'm sorry, we did, I think, say that at the last meeting, I'm sorry. Okay. Other board members, did you have items you wanted us to cover?
The cattle crossing, I think you guys have come to an agreement
Do
on
do
the
we have
cattle
a
crossing. and,
final drawing for that?
Yes, that
We
was.
wanted a detail of the device and
We gave a,
attached to the plan, included in the plan.
yeah, we gave a location and details on the plan. We gave a cut sheet of what we were contemplating. We're going to take that same item and put that same item right on the plan, so everything
Okay.
will be complete.
And I guess a note as well to say that that'll just be installed prior to those fields opening.
Prior to Phase 2,
Right.
correct.
Okay.
So it's not in its final form. There's agreement on what it'll be, but it's not in its final form.
Not on the plan yet, he's going to amend it.
Yeah, it's a matter of just taking the name that's on the cut sheet and putting it on the plan, the detail and everything from
Or
there.
approved equal, we talked about.
It's on there, yeah. We did everything you wanted. We're like 99.8% there.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else, Mike?
And then
Or
landscape.
John?
Yeah,
To
by
the-
the way, you got the thing that Steve's not,
Yeah.
stuck, still parked on 684.
Yeah, I understand that.
Sorry?
One of our board
One of our
members
board
is
members
still
is
in
stuck
his
on
car on
684, so sorry,
684.
that was
All right.
that text. Let me see, and the drainage plan, again, was all closed. The large events is really not part of this.
It's not
You're s-
closed, but it's 98 point whatever
Yeah.
percent, so.
Dutchess County Health Department, that's still pending and is really not part.
Everything's sitting there where we gave, I mean, their biggest issue was they wanted they wanted the hydrants on Route 52 tested again. We had given them information from 3 years ago. We gave them updated information. It's similar to what it
Okay.
was.
No, then, I'm sorry, that's it. That's my list.
Okay, any other comments from board members or questions?
Just one, with this sidewalk, from a safety perspective, is it better for it to be on the side of the dome or on the other side of the road?
Can I bring that back up so I can just clarify
Sure.
that?
Sure. Michelle, are you're going to cover landscaping? Okay.
Is that auditorium that's on the right side?
So if I understand your
We're down here.
question,
Yeah. go on.
is it safer to be on the north side
Yes.
of the road than the south side?
Yeah. I mean,
I mean, the fact that you have a pedestrian crosswalk in here and you're getting the students on the south side of 52 closer to the John Jay, if you go to the east, they'd have to continue to walk all the way to the crosswalk at the plaza there. And listen, I'm going to be completely honest. I mean, I think sometimes people take the shortest path, and it's not the safest path, but I think this is a shorter path because it
I
gets them
think
into
we
the
would
John
agree
Jay
with you on
School.
that.
Yeah.
Human nature would say, I'm not going to walk 2 miles if I could walk 1.
Honestly, the most ideal
least for me.
safety would be to leave the athletic fields from J straight across, so you never even go near 52.
Well,
Well, you do still have a sidewalk in
I-
between the 2 fields, right?
I think you had that dialogue with John Jay at the time, and there were some topographic challenges on that part.
Is there,
But I
is
thought
there a
they were going
sidewalk
to
between the two
collect
fields or no?
pedestrians here and bring them through.
Laura, you just asked a question that I'm not sure.
Is there a sidewalk?
Yeah,
So
and
you have
that's-
sidewalks here,
I thought we
here.
said we would pick them up off the road
Have
and bring them
sidewalks.
between the 2 fields.
So there is one between the two fields, Chris?
Yeah, there's a sidewalk, you can walk from here, over, across here.
No,
just
between
between
the
the
2
two
fields.
fields. There used to be one going from between the 2 fields across
Straight
into
You
J.
have like dugouts back to back, and there was space between the dugouts that I thought you had a
You're
talking about right
walkway.
here?
In other words, if you were at John Jay, you'd be leaving where the football field and the practice soccer field are,
Well, this is fenced
right
over
straight
here.
across. Pardon?
Plan?
I thought that's what this was. I thought this was,
Yeah.
See that
maybe not a
orange
formal
line there?
sidewalk, but at least a walkway.
It is, that's why I didn't see it.
Is there a sidewalk proposed from here going up that steep slope? There is no sidewalk. This is.
I'm talking, here, I'm talking about this. From the road, between the 2 fields, there was supposed to be a pedestrian walkway to pick up anybody that's walking on.
We have a sidewalk that comes out to here.
Perfect, okay, that's what I'm asking.
Okay, it doesn't go out.
I understand, okay.
Well, the original plans did go.
Can you show us
But
that same
but they
thing you just
couldn't
showed?
do it because of the grade.
There's a sidewalk down here.
Kids were getting too
There's
much.
no sidewalk over here.
But it does go out to Auditorium
Right
Drive.
to there.
This sidewalk goes
Saying.
out to here.
Okay.
And I, between here and here.
Right, okay.
There's a sidewalk. This,
They would have had to cut into it to bring the grade down itself. So I'm not saying somebody can't walk down the hill, but you can't put a sidewalk.
the connection is, instead of coming internally into the site here, they are going to walk straight.
Unless they're going to one of the 2 fields, in which case they'll just keep walking down the road and come in probably between the 2.
Perhaps.
Okay. All right.
But the sidewalk does remain between the two outdoor fields, so if the school did want to,
This is a sidewalk
at
that
some
comes down to
point,
here.
put
At
something in,
some
they...
point, right,
Have a
deal with the
connection.
grade and
Slot
bring a
to get in there.
connection, they could do it.
We have a sidewalk that comes right to our property line.
Or stairs, yeah.
But-
Okay. Michelle,
All these,
before,
all these routes are ADA accessible, right? Everything's designed to be ADA accessible?
you said 5 foot, right? That
The
should be-
ADA parking in the front, overflow parking because of the topographic change, there's no ADA
all your
parking in that area.
handicaps are gonna be in
All
front. If we
all the
look at the
handicap parking is in the front.
We did initially.
But the sidewalk you're
in the-
proposing along 52 will also be ADA compliant, correct?
Has-
There was
has to
overflow
be.
parking, and I don't think we required ADA for the overflow, but I can't remember how we.
I'm sorry?
Do you
Michelle, I
remember how
couldn't
we-
hear you.
originally we had this discussion, I just can't remember how it was resolved. We talked about the fact that there was overflow parking that was not on your site, and how we were handling the number of ADA spaces that were needed. Do we accommodate do we add additional ADA spaces to account for the overflow parking? And I just can't remember. I know we talked about it. I'll look into that.
I will
I think we
I'll look
added,
into that.
I think we added a few
There's
extras.
yeah, I mean, we have a lot of, this whole corridor here is ADA parking, and then we have ADA parking some over there. So I can't quote the number off the top of my head. I have to look that up.
Michelle, is that something we need to confirm, or?
Yep, I'll check it out. I mean, I remember having a discussion, but it was a long time ago, so I have to just remind myself.
And I'm sorry if I missed it, the final disposition of the fill removal plan is to be determined?
He said, yeah.
They have a quantity, now we have to get a
Right.
disposal plan when they get closer to it.
Okay.
Michelle, back on the ADA parking, so there's going to be standard parking for average usage, and then there's going to be event parking
Correct.
or event attendance that's going to be significantly higher. So does there have to be some sort of,
Well, we talked about this, and I just don't remember how we resolved it, but yeah,
Okay.
I believe we added additional ADA spaces to accommodate the fact that there was going to be overflow parking.
Okay.
And so it's not, typically with 273 spaces, you would need a certain amount. I think we added some extra spaces in.
okay.
And what about the 1,000 spaces? Or the 800 spaces?
That's
That's what it was based upon.
I think we
sheet
based it
four.
on the higher
I
number.
have to
Okay.
look into that. I was not a
Okay.
part of that.
Yeah.
I remember us talking about it, I just can't remember how we
I
resolved it,
don't
whether we had a
remember either,
special
but-
area that was going to become ADA parking for an event, or whether we actually put it on
And
the
I think
plan.
that's
No,
why those
I
spaces-
think we'd have to put it on the plan now because there's different grading requirements for
Fair enough.
ADA parking versus overflow.
But I think that whole section there is ADA, right? That whole line right there?
I do recall this entire section being
Yeah,
regraded for ADA. I just don't, I can't tell you if
How many
the
spaces?
ADA was based upon 773 versus 273. It's a valid point.
Okay. Okay. Anything else, Michelle?
Just
Landscaping.
landscaping.
Yes.
So the applicant did provide a landscaping plan. There are a couple small details that are, in my opinion, maybe we could spruce up a little bit, like right now, there's nothing shown around the signs. But they did provide renderings showing plantings around the side, so there's some things that perhaps we may want to look at. And some of it, we may not know where we would like landscaping until the dome is actually up and operational.
Okay.
So I don't know how we would do this exactly, but I'd like to propose perhaps working with the applicant. You know, they have a landscape plan now, they're showing a certain number of plantings. But I wouldn't mind having the ability to work with the applicant once the dome is up and operational and go back and sort of revisit the landscaping and make sure that the plants are where they need to be and everything.
Do we need any changes to the current landscaping plan before we would?
If they could just add some plants at least around the signage and in the,
You mentioned put somewhere where you limit
yeah,
it.
so I spoke with Lori about that. I mean, now you're going to add one of the,
Yeah, the
there
center
used to be
one, yeah.
plantings in the,
So-
there used to be sidewalks in all the medians. Those got removed as part of the stormwater discussions. And now it's a grassed kind of median,
Is it
except for
intended
where-
still for pedestrians, although it's grass, or is it intended to not be traversed?
This is not intended for pedestrians.
Okay.
The island here.
Okay.
And one of the things we had talked about was it may create an opportunity to add some additional trees into the parking lot area to soften the appearance of the
Okay.
dome.
And I think it's going to be more important, to be honest, it's this, the initial, where the crosswalks are, that view coming in is going to be pretty well shielded because of the existing vegetation. It's going to be over where the stormwater basin is, looking in from this side, that may be more of an issue.
How would I, just for the benefit of everybody, how would I bring up the landscaping plan? so
Sure.
you can see what's being
Thank you.
contemplated?
But we're going to iron out if there's going to be plantings in those aisles now, right?
Yeah,
And-
yeah,
and
the-
Well, that's what I'm saying, Scott. I think there's changes to the current landscaping
Gotta be
plan,
on
maybe
that.
not major changes, but a few
whatever it is, yeah.
changes.
And I just don't know how we implement changes later after it's built?
Well, it would have to be sort of, they would have to agree to work with us, I mean, I think, and revisit it.
It'd have to be either a bond in place?
We've done that a couple times with other applications where we said, hey, we need to see it in action, we're not sure if this is right, we'll revisit it within a year of your CO or something.
With a bond in place.
Yeah, I mean, they must, yeah. Or something
That's how we
equally.
handled the traffic signal originally. It was going to be 150 grand just in case. So I think my experience here has been, if that's what we're thinking we may need to do later, we need to have assurances that it's going to get done.
I think that's fair. I don't think it has to be exorbitant, we're talking probably
Whatever
just
Michelle
ensuring the
thinks
landscaping plan is
is a-
sufficient once we see the dome actually up, right?
So you do have the existing tree species in this area, and then you have a heavy conifer plantings that's coming in along this island as well, a further shield to the best of your ability that you can shield the dome along this corridor here. There are some street trees along the private drive connecting Auditorium and South Drive, and there are some street trees along the front. This is where we were talking about maybe adding a few additional trees may soften up the appearance as you're coming up the 52 corridor looking in, because we don't have as much of the heavy buffer being provided here that we do in this area over here.
And what if I'm westbound?
You're going westbound. I don't think I think these aren't coniferous. I think these are hardwoods over here.
Okay.
Is that really what you guys wanted? Because, I mean, for example, the town has a soccer complex across the street. There's no plantings between the fields. It's just miles of grass. I mean, what is it that you guys, you know,
I think I understand it from the town's perspective that due to the height of this, they're trying to soften up the,
It's 160 feet tall.
and they're trying
so
to.
it's about the dome.
160
It's
feet.
Yeah,
not-
and if I recall,
Okay.
I also
It's
think,
about the dome.
Well,
That's
and
what I
visually, if
was-
you're looking at trees that are, 15 or 20 feet high eventually,
I think
your eye
there's,
is catching that, not necessarily, the white behind it isn't necessarily
So
as.
it's about the dome, it's not about,
I actually think it's about the wall
I think it was,
also
yeah,
around the
I was going
dome.
to say, I remember when I was presenting Orthopedic Associates, some of the concerns that came up was the actual height of the wall that the dome's sitting on. That's going to extend, I think, 10 to 12 feet in height, and you're trying to soften the appearance of the concrete wall that surrounds
okay.
that.
Okay, that,
We're not trying to shelter the fields. The
Yeah.
fields are what they are,
Right.
and we have fields, like you said, around town. We're thinking of the structure.
no, I was kind of really just commenting to the ones that are off to the left there, that
These over
circling
here?
the fields,
Yeah,
yes.
but you can't put
Yeah.
plantings up where the field is, right? So you're stuck with where you've got your retention basin, and, is there anything we should be doing around that area for the westbound view shed?
Okay. It's not the first time I've had a bad line of questioning, it won't be the last.
No, it's a valid
Wasn't
questioning.
bad.
Questioning. I mean, listen, look, the project's been before you for 5 years. So,
Initially, and this may be because you've changed the parking a little bit, but in this rendering, you're showing a lot of plantings here, which I don't, and I know when the cattle crossing was there, these probably were not going to be done, but is there anything,
what we
Is this
have
now
here right now,
all
this is
parking?
this right here is a bioretention area.
okay.
Previously, this was,
I think that was a benefit to the SWIP, right? I don't think we want to remove that.
No, I think some things changed because of the stormwater plan changed a bit, so some of the landscaping got removed as a result of that.
well, there was no landscaping in this area here.
No, not over there, I was talking up more I was talking closer, because I don't know if that parking lot was exactly situated like that initially.
No, what we did was, there was no, this was the existing green space, and here's the trees that were here. So we took a look at taking the stormwater into this area through a bioretention area, and we're planting this whole entire area, which was all pavement last time. So we actually increased the green space over here from what it was.
So you're
Just-
adding those little, but that's not gonna be trees, it's just gonna be sort of,
No, this right here is trees.
but over there, next to the dome, I'm saying.
No,
Right
there'll
up
there'll be
against-
small scale
Yeah.
shrubbery.
I'm just thinking the wall from that side,
Oh, yeah.
for, hiding, kind of buffering the wall from that side.
Well, I think once you've got a access drive there and a sidewalk, you've got a bioretention area, and you've got parking, the people, once they're in there, they're gonna see the dome. There's, you've got these trees here, so if you're gonna look at doing any buffering, it's gonna be in this corridor here. I don't think buffering here is,
You don't have the space for it, I don't know, at this point.
and they use that for the snow drop-off in that area. So I think if you wanted to revisit anything, we may want to consider these types of trees here and making sure that they're coniferous versus a hardwood, so that it provides you the year-round.
And possibly up over next to the other basin, you said you've got hardwoods there now.
Yes,
Is that existing plantings, or is that plantings
that's
to
all
be?
existing in that's all in the conservation easement area.
Okay.
So we should find out if we can add plants on that.
Add plants and a sidewalk? Okay.
And a light.
And a light. Okay.
So I just want to, so we have this landscaping plan here. If I'm hearing this correctly, we've agreed we're going to add a couple more trees in this
think-
area here. You and I will revisit what we have here now and make sure that we have something that's coniferous along this corridor here and not hardwoods.
How wide are those medians?
And I would just like you to, Michelle, at least look at the westbound view shed if you can. I don't know that there's anything you can do with it, but let's just assess it, at least.
They're over 10 feet in width.
Okay, so maybe, because I'm just thinking maybe we would want to stagger them a little bit. so
You
that
said they're
you're
over
all-
10 feet in width?
Yeah, they're
I'm sorry,
over
we just know we're not picking you up on the mic, so.
I'm sorry. They're over 10 feet in width, the islands along that corridor.
Okay.
So maybe just do a little staggering and maybe a mix of deciduous and evergreen so that it
Yeah, and
gives it some,
And obviously, right here, you got 10, and then it gets wider in this
Right.
corridor here. So if you're looking to, do something that's going to be more shielding, I think we probably want to go coniferous the whole way. But
Yeah.
that's the town's call. It's eventually going to be dedicated, it's going to be a dedicated town road.
I'm just not,
So
How about,
How
do
do
we
you want-
have a sign, sorry.
I just want to,
Just want to bring up, I'm sorry, just a couple more quick
Go ahead.
points. Normally, we have a site plan, a structure gets completed, the parking lot gets done, all the trees go in, sidewalks, lighting. We inspect the site, everything's per the plan, and, we sign off on it, we issue a CO or at least a temporary CO. So in this case, you have phased construction. You're going to be looking to get a temporary or possibly a permanent CO on the dome, and yet we know there's going to be a big pile of dirt right outside that's going to have to get removed, and there's going to be a construction area for the two fields to the east. I'm not so much concerned the fields to the west because they're isolated by by South Drive, but, so you're going to have a pedestrian walkway from the rear satellite parking lots, and they're going to be walking by, at some point, some kind of active work zone between removing the 80,000 yards of fill and building those fields. So there should be something, I'm not sure which sheet to put it on, but that it's going to be protected, a fence or something, not just that orange fence that falls down after a couple of windstorms, but there's going to have to be something to protect that active work area from the people that are, visiting and using that dome. You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah, you're
Yes.
talking on this corridor over here.
I'm talking about along that side of the dome.
Yeah.
And that parking, whatnot, there's going to have to be something, because I don't want to argue about it
A
later.
permanent fence in the interim.
I think
for now.
permanent chain link fence, because there's going to be quite a scope of work there. It can be, a temporary chain link fence, but something that's durable.
And how long do you see that lasting?
Well, and they've been having some dialogue on this. If they were to start running, say, 5 to 8 trucks a day over a course of a year, they can get rid of about 40,000 yards, which would leave that with the remaining of about 30,000 yards.
So it's a year just to get rid of it.
If they run 8 trucks a day. And that's not a lot of trucks. That's only 1 truck every hour. They're trying to limit the amount of trucks on the road. If they wanted to be obviously more ambitious and run, 15 trucks a day, it's done. It's gone. One of the things we did once.
But then you still got to build these fields. You got to bring in gravel. I mean, there's going to be a construction activity to build these fields.
Yeah.
You got a clubhouse, you got the there's going to be actual construction activity there.
Yeah, one of the.
Close
One
proximity.
of the things that was recommended to them was establish your subgrade on the west portion of the site because they need fill over there. And then whatever's additional fill you have remaining to store that on the east side. That way you only have 1 stockpile area. And that's what we recommended. And hopefully, 30,000 yards versus 70,000 yards is obviously a significant difference. But if they were able to,
But I don't think it matters whether they're for a month or a year, you're going to have an active work zone in some capacity next to a public
correct,
venue that needs to be, protected, that people just aren't wandering over and during either working hours, non-working hours. There'd have to be some kind
yeah,
of.
I guess the point I'm getting at here is I'd like to have a little bit of flexibility in terms of if they do remove 40,000 yards of that fill material, we don't have to fence in the entire area, we just fence in around where the stockpile area is.
Yeah, but you're still constructing fields, you're still grading, you're still placing stone, you're still doing all that work to build the fields themselves. Concession stand, dugouts, I mean, you still have.
Well, that'd be phase 2 of the project. They have to
Right,
come
but-
back
but-
and get approval for the concession stands that are going in there, and they have to go back to the Department of Health to get approval for the water service and the,
So let me ask this question, is it feasible that they could have the ball fields open without the concession stand built? That's a possibility? On either side, the east or west fields, that's a possibility?
and they wouldn't have, just thinking about this, so they wouldn't have sewer, they wouldn't have water.
I only ask that question because it brings you back to the same thing, if those fields are built, but yet now you have construction of the concession stand, now that's got to be protected.
Yeah,
So
that's,
you got, it's one thing if you're going to do all this work before you open, but now if you're phasing it and you're going to have parts of it open, parts under construction, and you got to give some thought to how you're going to protect the
Yeah.
public.
on the west side here, are we in agreement that this could pretty much just be seeded? I mean, this is something that, their thought process here is the dome's open for, once it opens, for about 3 to 4 years before they go ahead with the outdoor fields.
So, Chris, I think we're fine with that, but then I want the plan to show it as seated and clear that you're coming back to us for a site plan amendment when you're ready to build.
Correct, we can do that. And all I was going to say is on this side of the site where we're seeding it, if we have a flat area, where we have the large stockpile, I'm in agreement, we should enclose that whole thing. I'm absolutely in agreement. I'm just saying, if they get rid of some of this material in the interim, let's shrink what we're putting the fence around,
Okay.
is all I'm saying.
As long
But
as
you're
you're
saying
seating the outside of
conceivably-
it and you're not building it, I'm fine with that.
Right,
Yeah.
conceivably, then, the pile could be there for a number of years as you dwindle away on it, and then you'll protect that, and then when you actually construct those fields, then you're going to protect that construction.
Correct, that's what I'm saying. I just
Are
don't want
they
to
coming back prior to that? Is that what we're saying?
I just don't want to
I'm
put a
going to,
whole,
Talk about
yes,
that then.
absolutely.
I
What
just
what
don't
I'm
wanna
hearing
put a-
tonight is that we're going to seed those for now.
I don't want to put a whole.
When they're ready to build, they're
Yeah.
going to have concession stands and restrooms and other
Coming back.
things, so we'll come back and have a site plan amendment.
Yeah, we have, well, let's take a step back. We have the concession stands already on the plans that were part of the original approval. All I'm saying is for the protection standpoint, Because I thought the comment was to put a
But
fence
you said
along.
it could be 3 to 5 years before
3 to
you
4
would
years,
build that.
correct.
So I think you show it as a grassed area now with an intended use. I'm fine if you show us a conceptual plan, but I don't think we can approve exactly what's going to be there, because I don't know what's going to change in the next 3 to 5 years.
Well, the plans that you have in terms of the level of detail for the actual fields, there, you have the layout of the fields, you have the detailed grading of the fields, you have all the fencing that goes to the fields, you've got the dugout locations, you've got the concession stand locations, and all the landscaping and how the under drains tie into the drainage system. You have a significant level of detail as it relates to
I
all.
think the only thing is missing is how we're going to protect the public during the course of that construction.
Correct.
Do we need to get health department approval 5 years from now, or can they get health department approval now and build something 5 years from now?
We have health department approval to bring water and sewer here. What we don't have health department approval for is because of the sanitary invert elevations, at a later date, they got to come and get health department approval for a pump station for the concession stand, because it can't work
I
by
don't think it would
gravity.
be a major process, but I'm
Okay.
feeling very strongly that I would rather
Well,
it come
let's
back,
just-
even if it comes back as a minor amendment to say, okay, we're ready to build, I think it should come back.
But back to that, they're going to have to pull a building permit for each concession stand whenever that happens. And as part of that, they'll have to demonstrate they got their health department approval.
Correct.
If it's not shown on this plan, it'll have to be on the subsequent plan. So, I mean, the building department
But
can
you know, 5
regulate
years from now, they're
that.
going to want to make changes, right? There's
Well,
going
but
to be
if-
some slight change, or
but if
there's
it's a
going to be a new
change, it's back
standard
to-
in the industry, or there's going to be something.
But if it's a change,
I
it's
see
back
where
to
you're
being an amendment to the site plan, though. By virtue of a change, it triggers an
Right.
amendment.
So why can't it be a minor amendment to come back in at the point where they're ready to build? And that way, if you do have changes like that, it's,
So would you, so would
Understood.
it be just kind of an overview of where they're at, if there's
Yeah.
any changes, to keep the town abreast of any changes?
yes.
Yeah, and for the purpose of this plan, we'll give them the flexibility of, they've got to protect the area where there's the stockpiles and seed. the
Give us a
remaining-
phasing plan that
And
shows that,
protect
yes.
the area once construction commences.
Correct.
For the actual construction of the fields and the appurtenances.
On both sides.
Right.
Correct.
Well, yeah, but I really would, I prefer, especially if it's going to be several years from now, I prefer it to come back as a minor amendment to make sure that everything's still the same and the plans haven't changed.
Yeah, just so,
I just think-
I just want to make sure
yeah.
everybody's aware, this, obviously, this portion of the site is being built as part of Phase 1, the stormwater facilities here. And there's some stormwater facility, there's catch basins within this corridor.
Just show that in a phasing plan, even if you give us a shaded plan that says, here's everything being done right now, and here's the stuff that will be done in the future. And to Scott's point, how you're going to fence in the construction areas and the soil removal area, or soil.
And I'm sorry, so you're saying you really want an outline of that now, not,
We should understand what the intended phasing is, but knowing it's going to
And
potentially
how we're
be
going to, how they're
3
going
to
to protect
5
the public,
years.
yeah.
There's phasing in terms of erosion and sediment control that's been provided on the plans for Phase 1 and Phase 2. We can get into more detail on the fencing and protection of the general public.
Okay.
Hey, Scott, when they begin taking the fill off the property, are they going to go out on to 52, or can they go out the back of the site to that link road that,
Depends if they're going east or west and whether that road's been dedicated or not in the back. But Auditorium Drive, I think, is a right-out only.
yeah, just
So if they're going
with the
east,
kids
they
and
would
the
take
and
that
the
route.
sidewalks, I would, be nice if they went out the back.
It's all timing, yeah.
Yeah,
Lime Kiln hasn't been dedicated yet, has it?
No.
yeah, that's what I would, be a safer option for with the kids on the sidewalk and that field being removed from the site.
I don't know if
The
the
trucks.
applicant controls that yet.
Okay.
I don't mean
Yeah.
yet, I don't believe the applicant controls the opening of that entrance, correct?
We don't have any rights
At
to
Lime
it.
Kiln, but
I mean,
once it's available, you certainly
Auditorium
could.
Drive with a traffic light there, not Auditorium, but South Drive, Rothel, where the traffic light's going to be a safe place. I
Yeah.
mean, That's going to be the safest place to exit if they're not using Lime Kiln.
Okay. My last note was just regarding signs for the site And Michelle had given us these two, you're showing at the entrance two signs. Is this still intended, or are you still developing what the sign plan's going to be?
They're the two locations for the signs at the front here and over here.
Okay. And are they going to look similar to this, or is there a different, sorry. This was conceptual in a very long time ago, so that's why I'm asking.
One of the things that are being developed now, I've shared with, I can go speak to the microphone.
Thanks. That's fine. Thank you.
They're still looking at doing the concrete sign. I don't know if the lettering is still going to be the same.
Okay.
But they're looking at a concrete sign with some landscaping, some lighting on it, and then the name of their
So
facility.
not a lit sign, but lighting shining on a concrete sign?
Lighting shining on the concrete. I've explained to Denise that we have to provide that detail to you in terms of a rendering. I know you want that now as opposed to later, so we've shared that with her, that you want to see that now. She's going to provide you the dimensions, the material types.
Terrific. Then the other thing is, in this other rendering, I see that there's a sign on the dome itself, and that's not, we don't typically put signs on buildings like that. So are you intending a sign on the building, and will it stay on the concrete portion, or what are you?
The signage that's been discussed is actually on the top of the dome.
I think the East Fishkill Golf Center has, don't they?
Yeah.
On the center of the top of the dome?
When you say top of the dome, as in like visible from airplanes? or-
Yes, visible from airplanes.
From the blimp.
But not from Route 52?
No, not
Okay.
unless you're on a drone or something, or jets in a
Wait,
car.
okay, wait, I just wanted to understand that. So like here on the,
They were
this
talking about
right
putting,
here, or
yeah.
on the side like it's shown here?
they talked about putting at our meeting, they talked about putting something on the top.
I can't tell
So
what
on
you're,
the, so if the dome is like this, the sign would be up here.
okay.
Right in the center.
So when you were flying over, you'd see it.
And no other signs on the building itself? I mean, I'm assuming you're going to have something.
They'll have the name of the Hopewell Sports Dome over the doorway.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
Michelle, do we need,
Sorry, say that
do we
again,
need the
Denise?
dimensions of that sign for what's going to go over the doorway? Or how do we want to handle anything going on the building itself?
Technically, the only thing the planning board, only purview of the planning board is the location where the signs are going to be located on the actual site plan. Anything that's on the, no matter what, they have to still submit to the building department for a sign permit.
Okay,
We have nothing in our sign code that would handle a sign like this at all.
Okay.
So, and, you know, right now, they're showing the locations, the two signs that are physically going to be on a site plan. This is actually on the structure itself.
Right.
So I think that would probably have to be handled as part of a sign permit application. However, anything, I mean, the signage here is probably going to be really different that they're going to propose, really different from anything that we've ever seen in the town. So
Right.
the sooner we understand what it is that they want, the sooner we can make comments and sort of discuss what will be out there.
and again, if we're, this would be another thing that I think if the ball fields are being built later, I would assume at some point there'll be signs on the ball fields, whether it's advertising or something else. I think we would just want to understand what that would look like at the point where you're ready to build. So I think having it just come back to us and explain where those are going to be located. Okay.
So what,
And the
what
other thing is
Denise-
just, the rendering you have here shows two signs on either side of the entrance, but I don't think that's what's on the site plan. One, you only have one and then one down there, right? So if this
one
is,
and one down here.
yeah, so just make sure that that's not what they actually want.
Okay. Michelle, was there anything else, or Scott?
Can I make one clarification?
Sure.
Denise corrected me while we were talking. Whatever the emblem is that goes on the top of the dome, they would be looking to get a permission and to put a similar emblem on the side,
On the concrete wall? or-
concrete wall at a smaller scale.
Okay,
she
so, Michelle, back to, I guess, your point, that's going to go to the building department at the point where it's ready because it's affixed to the building. So anything you're not affixing to the building, show it on your site plan. But just make sure you know that you don't just put up a sign, go to the building department and make sure that
No,
they
no.
give you the,
Those are the only two signs that we have proposed on the plan right now that they are considering.
okay. And do we have enough information on the plan right now for those signs, or do we need?
They provided the
Dimensions and
location,
materials, I think we
and,
said we
yeah,
needed, right?
He's gonna get us the materials, and he's gonna also just confirm that he doesn't want one on either side of the entrance, it's just one on each entrance.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's just one, I think.
That's what they're showing, but I
that-
wasn't sure.
That rendering was the early rendering that was provided for this project.
Okay.
So,
So-
at some point, the back service road is open, South Drive to Lime Kiln Road. So assuming for a moment, there's a sign at the end of that in Lime Kiln, at that intersection. Everyone know whatever gate that is?
Gate 5.
We're not talking about a sign there right now. But assuming there's a sign there,
That's on the East Campus property?
yes.
Okay, so that was gonna be my next conversation.
But we'll come
Okay,
back to
good.
that. So now you make that left and you drive South Drive, and you're driving and you get to the West Campus, and now you see the dome as you approach it. Does there have to be, are you thinking about, or are you going to come back and amend later? Because I know the road's not open now, but at some point, your signing's going to change. Because now, instead of just people coming in off 52, potentially you
Yeah.
got people coming in the backside. And there's going to be a whole different set of signage, parking, entrance, et cetera, buses, coming in the back door.
That was
right?
discussed during the subdivision process.
And that's going to require another amendment to the site plan to allow all that,
If-
which is fine, but it's another reason to come back.
So just as part of the Global Foundry subdivision, we did include easements on the map at the different gates for other people, property owners that did not own the property that were right at the gates, so that they could place signs for
Correct.
people in the back. I feel like, and this is was gonna be my next point, I feel like we may also need to protect those that are gonna be behind you and maybe using this entrance, where they may wanna have a sign, off of 52, because we have no ability to do that right now. You know, we don't have anything set aside on this particular site plan for anyone that may be in behind the dome coming off of 52.
Okay.
So that's something that we should talk about.
So you, just throwing this out, just saying from the eastern portion of the site, you've got the property that's owned by another.
Right, the school,
Mhm.
right.
Now, this is, whoever buys the rear of the property acquires this portion of the property as well. That's not part of the dome property.
Right, but you have a sign there, right, for the
Correct.
dome?
We got an easement to do that.
Right.
From
So,
the
but-
property owner.
But my question is, if someone goes behind you, would they have the ability to put a sign where your sign is, so that they, for that
I mean,
entrance?
coming in on South Drive as opposed to Auditorium.
Or auditorium,
Or
for that
auditor-
matter.
Either one.
Yeah, I can't tell you on the east side, because we had to pay for an easement for that, or the owner had to pay for an easement for that sign.
Okay.
So whoever purchases additional property in the rear, they'd have to negotiate an easement for their signage on that section of the site.
Or it's something for us to keep in mind.
Right.
Yeah.
But on
Okay.
your piece, the piece that you control and operate, that's something we
Well, I think
Yeah.
at the point in time where somebody has something they want to propose there, I'm sure the applicant would entertain the discussion, but they won't be required to grant the easement. Depending
How
on
does
the
it work on
use,
the
it may
other
be,
It should be,
Right, on the other end,
Reciprocal.
they have rights because we created the easement during the subdivision.
but we've already filed the
No, I know,
subdivision
I
on this
understand
property,
that.
so
But I'm just saying that it's just something that,
I'm just trying to remember, and I don't recall off the top of my head. Do you take ownership of this entire pork chop at a later date? This right here, the right turn in and the light, when this gets dedicated to the town?
that's a Scott question.
I'm going to
50-foot
say
right-of-way.
yes. I mean, you wouldn't dedicate
So you'll own
part of it,
this, right?
that island,
Yeah.
yeah, presumably.
So you'll have the ability for, from the signage standpoint.
Well, I don't,
Maybe,
I'm not
because you got
sure that
site
from a
distance
view
issues
standpoint,
in
yeah,
that-
from
in
a
that
site
Port
Well,
distance.
yeah, I mean, you'd, obviously you'd have it situated a little further in. I mean,
Yeah.
the difficulty with signage here is it's a ball field. Goes back to the conservation easement.
But at
what
the
you can
point where
put in.
somebody wanted to talk to you, you would at least have a conversation with
absolutely.
someone.
Yeah.
I think, I would agree with you that we're not going to ask you to provide rights to some unknown person in some future state at this time. But it's a good point, Michelle, I understand what you're saying, I'm just, without an applicant
No, I
requesting
know,
that,
it's
and
just
without a
something that-
discussion that could actually be had about what it would look like, I don't think we can ask this applicant
We probably should
to
have thought
grant
of,
an easement.
we probably should have all thought about it when we did this last time, because we only got the signage easement just for the dome. We probably should have made this for the entire entity there, that signage easement. But listen, whatever happens in the back next time, they're gonna have to come in for a subdivision or something. This is fair game to just extend that
Right.
signage easement to everybody.
Right,
That's
Okay.
the side you bought the easement, or you paid for an easement.
Yeah, we paid for a number of easements over here. That included that sidewalk easement as well, and utility easements that we had to.
okay. Chris, do you have other questions for us before I run down the list of my notes?
The landscaping, I was at the computer, I didn't hear what the thought process was. I know you want to come back at a later date, but I heard a couple of different things thrown
Well-
out. Somebody said
Well,
bond.
for your current landscaping plan, my notes are that you're going to give us, if you're going to install plants around the signs, and when you give us the sign detail, you can add that in. In the parking medians, you may add a few trees.
Yep.
And you're going to look at your westbound view shed and along South Drive to see if there's additional plantings or a change to the plantings to make coniferous trees instead of deciduous.
hardwoods.
Sorry. Hardwoods. That's what I have for current landscape plan, and then what Michelle was suggesting was, because we don't really know what the site will look like, she was asking for the ability for the town to come back and review your landscaping plan within the first year after your formal certificate of occupancy is issued, in
Okay.
case there's gaps or issues that we don't foresee right now.
Now, someone mentioned a bond. I just jotted something down when I was over there.
I
bond.
did. I don't know how we otherwise enforce if we need to add anything.
I think that's something, let's, if it's all right, just let's work with Michelle, and I don't know, I couldn't discuss a dollar amount right now, Scott, if that's what you're saying. I don't know what that
No, I
would
don't
be,
know. I don't think
but
we're-
I don't think
yeah.
it's,
I was going to
It's the
suggest
concept of a bond, though.
that no building permits for Phase 2 be issued until the additional landscaping, if desired, is installed.
I think that's fair. Are you okay with that, Scott? That's, okay.
Well, the only problem is if Phase 2 never gets built, we're still left with, but it's something, but there's no guarantee, or when.
Okay. Seems like a good middle ground.
Okay.
All right, so can I, Chris, I'm going to run down my notes unless you have other questions for me.
No, that was it. Thank you.
Okay. So this hopefully is in roughly the order that we talked about them. So you agreed that you were going to provide us with a lighting plan for lighting along the rear of the dome.
Yes.
You're going to provide a seasonal snow signage to stay back from the areas of the dome where you have temporary snow storage.
Yes.
You'll have sign and barricade plan when using overflow parking to prevent pedestrians from entering through the rear doors.
Yes.
You're going to provide us with the description of your event management plan, and I think you called it, is it an event management plan or a traffic
Traffic
management?
management plan, yeah.
Traffic management plan, sorry. For events with less than 1,000 cars expected, but where you would require the use of your overflow parking. And that'll include overflow parking signs, locations of where you would have individuals that would be assisting
Stationed,
drivers
okay.
and pedestrians, how many and where. And then a site plan Scott suggested with the lots actually labeled. So if you're parking lot A, lot B, or whatever you're going to call them, so that,
Yeah, for that, would it help if I just kind of create another sheet like this that kind of gives you an overview and says, okay, parking lot, and then we'll insert that into the plan set, and obviously that'll be a little bit smaller scale when they put the sign up.
I think that's fine. But-
Okay.
And you can just do like little call-outs for this is what the signs will look like. I think
Perfect.
that's fine. If you want to add the, Michelle, I'm thinking add the temporary lights to that as well, if you don't mind putting that layer on that view, that would,
Sure.
be helpful.
Now, that is on our lighting plan, just so everybody knows. We put temporary lighting on
I
it.
agree, I'm just saying if you're doing an event sort of plan, having the event lighting would also be
We'll
helpful.
reciprocate when we...
Just the locations of the poles, you're saying?
Well, yeah, it doesn't
Yeah,
have to
you
be
don't
all
have
the
the photomet-
detail.
yeah.
You already provided all the detail, the exact
Correct.
lights and everything. I'm just saying the locations would be fine. So we asked to have an explanation of how the rear access points of the building, we originally thought they were going to be bulkheaded, but now it looks like they're going to be locked doors. So Scott's suggesting that we need to just understand when you believe the larger scale events would or could begin, and if there's anything else we need to do. You're already proposing the lighting, we're already talking about the event plan for less than 1,000, but give us a feel for when you think you would have events over 1,000, and what you're doing with those rear doors for the current plan. You have a little bit of work on your future water line detail. You said it's almost complete, but you had a few things, Scott, I think that we were tweaking just to make it
Well,
final.
again, though, I think he wants to go with the current plan, correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, that you have, going to get a Board of Health approval, and we're going to come back and
Correct. I'd like
make
to,
that kind of a field adjustment.
correct. If we start the process now with the DOH, it'll be like a new application, and we'll start the whole process over. I'd rather do it
And
during the
I
course of
would
construction.
recommend or suggest that we can just do a letter file amendment, to the file, once we finalize that. I don't think that in and of itself needs to come back.
Okay. Now, you have proposed a new sidewalk based on your meeting with the DOT along the south side of Route 52 with access to the front door of your dome at the midpoint, give or take, of that sidewalk. And we need to, I know you showed it to us tonight, but that's not a plan that's actually been submitted to the planning office yet.
You're
So when you
correct.
talk about these changes, we'd ask you to submit all of them in. You also have the conservation easement where that, excuse me, crosswalk to the front door is located, so we need to know if a sidewalk can be installed there, and lighting could be installed at the same time. We also mentioned, if we're looking at that conservation easement, excuse me, we would look to see whether or not, Michelle, I think we could install any additional trees if needed, and they may not be along the retention basin.
Can we go back to, I'm just thinking about this, all of a sudden it just hit me. This eventually gets dedicated to the town. Do we need to show
Easement,
an easement for
potentially,
that sidewalk and for that lighting?
because you need the ability to clear a sidewalk, if nothing
Yeah.
else, so.
So we need to show an easement on there.
So you may need to have an amendment to the conservation easement. We're going to need to work through what that looks like.
What
which
size width would you want for that easement? Do you have, like,
I
20
would
feet?
give yourself at least, 5 feet on either side, right?
Okay.
At least 15 or 20 feet,
15
I would think.
Okay.
Because you're going to, with snow removal, I mean, if you have a heavy snow, you're going to want at
Yeah,
least
you're
a
right.
little, to bring, even if it's a little, I wouldn't,
Well,
you
you're
know,
going to
snow
have sidewalk,
blower.
you're
or
going to have
something.
lighting. I don't know if there's going to be any landscaping, but, landscaping not so much, but lighting and sidewalk itself.
Lighting in the
Maybe
sidewalk.
sign. I mean, that might be something we talk about.
And who's maintaining the sidewalk now? I mean, originally, you were going to maintain the sidewalk that came on the service road and down Auditorium Drive, at least that much of it. So
It's
was it
just
discussed who maintains that sidewalk now, out on 52?
The sidewalk along the property line is, I guess, is the dome's responsibility right now because no one's taken ownership of the conservation easement. They currently own that. This is a good question and one that should be discussed because eventually that gets turned over to the town. I forgot whether it's after the CO is for Phase 2 or the CO is for Phase 1.
But the sidewalk in the right-of-way, I'm talking about the one along
That's the one I'm
52.
talking about, who,
That's
usually
outside the
it's-
conservation easement, right?
it's usually the responsibility of the property owner where it abuts. And eventually, the property owner is going to be the town.
Scott, who's maintaining the sidewalks on the north side right now, like along Ortho Associates and,
Orthopedic is responsible for theirs.
okay.
Theirs is on their property, though.
It's,
Oh, because it's not, yeah, it's not any,
that's the
gotcha.
one that meandered into because of the shallow right away.
So it's another question we got to get to the bottom of, because that should, I think, be clearly
We're going to
decided
need to
now.
pull the conservation easement and just figure out what can and can't be done. We may not even be able to do this based on the way that's been filed, so we're going to have to look.
No, I hear you.
I'm just, we're going to have to look at it, and let's have, if we can, Michelle, if we can follow up with Tom and maybe have him take a look at it. I want to make sure that we aren't outside our realm of possibility here. And Chris, to your point, the sidewalk maintenance along Route 52, we need to address as well, because if we've dedicated that conservation easement property to the town,
Yeah, you take it over at one point after a building, I forgot which CO, but
Okay.
eventually comes to the town, so who's responsible?
so we're just
for
going to need to understand what that's going to look like.
Yeah, I think we got to give it all that maintenance, because like even that sidewalk that's going to go between the two fields and the Butt Auditorium Drive, you know, down the road, should the school do something on the other side to connect to it, you know, they're going to have to maintain
our
their
respons-
sidewalk.
yeah,
but- Yeah.
that's our
But is there
responsibility.
anything in here that says in the winter, that's got to be maintained? Because if it's not, you know, so there really should be a maintenance agreement
Okay.
for all these sidewalks and
Let's pull the conservation easement, and let's work with Tom and the applicant to figure out how we deal with sidewalk maintenance in general, but specifically along that Route 52 corridor. My next note is that the cattle crossing being changed to the ACT grade needs a final plan, so we have the conceptual plan and the location, but I think, Scott, you said there was some additional detail needed.
yeah.
You have ADA parking to be confirmed. Michelle, you're going to confirm that for both normal and event use? And identify how many ADA spaces we have based on the site spots versus when the overflow parking is used. We already went over the landscaping plan, but just to reiterate, plants around the signage, when you give us the sign detail, you'll provide that. You'll look at the parking medians, the westbound view shed, and along South Drive. You're going to provide to us a signage plan with the locations on the site plan for anything not on the building itself. And that will include the materials you expect. It may not be the exact graphics yet, we understand that, but you'll tell us what to expect for the sign and the dimensions. For the site plan itself, you're going to provide us with a phased construction plan with fencing of the construction areas to keep out pedestrians and make sure that, you're looking at me funny, Scott, sorry.
We're good.
Oh, okay. Construction areas to keep out pedestrians, and we'll show only the dome and the other portions of the site that you're going to build now as the current plan, and you'll show us what portions will be built at a later date, with the understanding that when you're ready to pull those building permits for the next phases, you'll come in for a
back in.
minor site plan amendment to the planning board, just so we understand if you had to make any tweaks to the plan in the meantime and before those fields and the concession stands are built out. Those were my notes. Did I miss anything?
Yeah, maybe, well, I was going to just add satisfying any remaining Morris Associate comments as they pertain to this SWIP. Not that there's many.
Yeah,
but-
I'm making an assumption that there may still be items in your existing approval that weren't completed, and there may be notes from any of our professionals. I don't know that Dave had anything, but I think Pete had a few comments that needed to be addressed, yes.
The other was the truck, getting us the number of trucks that they would be doing for the Durban. I guess that could be a,
I think. that would
I
be-
had in my note that the cut-fill permit would cover that, and that's going to be done later, is that right?
I don't
you mean
think they
trucks
ha-
to remove
I
the
don't-
fill, or
I
did
don't-
you-
I don't think they have a handle on it right now, so I think it has to be
No, I
done
think
later.
we've got a pretty good handle on that number that we.
It's going to be 8 trucks a day? Is that what we're saying?
Oh, no, I thought you were talking about the quantity of fill we have a good handle on. What I don't have a positive, what I'm not positive of is the amount of trucks it's going to be removing, whether they're going to go with.
Because I think
8
it's
to
going to have to
12.
be a permit at some point, right? So we're not ready, we don't have the detail for that, so that won't be part of what we're talking about here, but you
No,
will
but
at some point need a
They know they need
permit
to come
for it.
back for that.
You'll need to come back for it, that's right.
and only other one that I think, I don't know if you said, was Central Hudson and leasing the lights.
Yes, I have that, and understanding
Oh.
dawn to dusk type lighting is what I have on mine.
Yeah, I missed that one, thank you, Michelle.
But the only other, on that note, if the town has to sign any agreements, I'll check tomorrow, I may have to be referred back to the town board, though, for their consent, you know. Planning board can't force the town into something.
We wouldn't dream of that.
Wouldn't dream of it.
So sidewalk lighting along 52. And that's something, hopefully, Chris, if you can have a conversation with Central Hudson and then work with Michelle for photometrics and what the options are, let's see if we can find something that works that's not too onerous. But I think we do need to have those sidewalks lighted, especially because if you think about wintertime when it's going to be icy, and I just don't want to have something out there that people are falling.
Just so I just, from my dialogue with Central Hudson, you would want the lighting to coincide with the site in terms of when they would turn off. Like, I think, I know on one of these sheets, you have requirements for when site lighting has to be turned off. You want whatever we put in the right of way to
I would
coincide
think
with
so.
that.
I mean,
Well, there's a couple things to consider. I mean, I don't know what the height of the original poles were. Do we know? 15 feet, 12
Probably
feet?
about 15 feet, I think.
And if these wind up being, much higher, are you starting to get into
To glare into the road.
across the street?
well, I think we have to
Nighttime
look
light
at,
that
I
wasn't
think
ever
part of the
vetted out
discussion with
before.
Central Hudson, though, is for shielding. We're trying to light practically straight
Yeah,
down,
as
so
long
we're
as
going to
you
have to find
accomplish
out what the
that.
options are with Central
I'm
Hudson.
not sure we're going to be able to do that. When they go up high, it's harder to do that, because in order to push it forward, which you need to do, they would have to shield it this way, and I think it's possible that they have a fixture that does that, but it might be difficult. We'll find out.
Let's at least see what the options are before we,
Yeah, I mean,
And whether you can go dusk to dawn, or you can put a clock, or what those options are.
yeah, I
as
gotta
well.
find that out. But I wanted to be able to tell them hours, and I can refer to hours now.
okay.
Yeah, it says the field lighting is supposed to be, any activity on the field is supposed to be done by 11.
11 o'clock,
And
that's
then
right.
everything's done, the lights turn off within a half hour of the.
Yeah, I was going to say, at least 30 minutes afterwards. You got to give folks time to get to wherever they've parked. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Anything else?
Got all mine.
Chris, what's your timing, do you think, on getting us these revisions?
I think, looking at all this. I think I can get them in by, you need them by next Friday, right? Or the 20, you would need them by the day after Memorial Day, right?
For the June 19th meeting?
That'd be, you would need them by, is it the 30th? Or 31st?
That's going to be the 31st.
Would you want a
The only thing I would ask
meeting
is,
the first week in June?
That would only give them a week to submit all the
This
changes.
is-
That's the problem. yeah.
the work we could do in the conservation easement, that has to be reviewed by the town attorney, correct?
Yes. But we can Michelle will help coordinate that for us.
Yeah, the 31st is doable to have all this back in your hands.
Okay. So,
Well, I don't know, are you going to be able to get all that from Central Hudson? I mean, to me, that's the trickiest part, is the,
We're gonna have to get this figured out. Yeah, we'll figure this out in terms of, we'll be able to provide you a light in terms of the agreement. I think that might take a little, whether that's the town or whether the town enters into an agreement and the owner is responsible for paying for it. I don't know how you're gonna work out the legal standpoint, but if we could find a light, we could certainly do the photometrics in this timeframe.
okay. I want to strongly encourage you to stay in touch with us if you're hitting a stumbling block so that the town is kind of kept in the loop and we don't, I don't want you to come in the next time and have a plan that we haven't seen before. It was fine
Yeah.
tonight. We understood that there was meetings happening last week and changes being made last minute, but ideally, your next visit in front of us is going to be an amended resolution. So we can't do that if you present us brand-new information at that meeting.
Understand, and the reason why I brought this tonight is.
It's fine, it's
yeah,
fine. I'm just saying,
To get your input if you
Right.
wanted other changes from the DOT.
okay.
So, and that's fair, and I understand.
I think, Chris, also, anything that you can determine between DOT and Central Hudson as far as any agreements that the town may have to enter into, if you can get that to us in a letter request.
Okay.
In advance of the next meeting, so it can at least get in the pipeline for consideration.
And if you're meeting with Central Hudson and you want someone from the town to attend, just give us the heads up. We can try to have somebody attend. Scott, I think if you or Michelle is able to do that, that would be very
No,
helpful.
This is very helpful. Central Hudson will be our focal point
Okay,
going forward.
okay,
I think that's our biggest obstacle here.
okay. do you have any questions about the takeaways here and what you're providing to us?
It's a long list.
I know it is. But I don't
It's doable.
think, I don't think any of it is,
Listen, I think
again,
this is a-
to Scott's point, maybe aside from your discussion with Central Hudson, I think all of it you can accomplish.
I
It's
think
not,
this was a thorough review. I think this was a great session we had tonight going through this. And, you know, I think this is what was needed to kind of see this thing through so that, you know, when we come back, we've already dotted the i's and crossed the t's for the next meeting. And the
Great.
client has an understanding of what the expectations are. We do. And I greatly appreciate your consideration if we can make this lighting work. I can't thank you enough on behalf of our client,
Thank you.
so.
and we'll put you on then, again, you'll have to make your submission in
We will.
time, but as long as you do, you'd be on for our next meeting on June 19th for the discussion and, if appropriate, amended approval. But again, I just strongly say if you bring us something new that night, you tie our hands.
Yeah,
So,
there's
okay.
a lot of the stuff you've asked for
I
was
get it. I
actually in this
totally
submittal,
get
just
it.
so you know.
Yeah.
You know, We talked about it, but a lot of the stuff was in here today, all the pedestrian signage
No,
and lighting.
we
and
we
stuff.
can see the work
Yeah.
that's gone into it. We can see you're moving it forward, and that's a good thing.
All righty, well, thank you very much for your time this evening, and thank you for coming out in such bad weather.
You
Appreciate it.
bet, you bet. I'm sorry we weren't a full complement of the board.
Yeah, everybody get home safe, Denise said.
Yes.
All right,
great.
thank you, Denise.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, folks.
Take it.
Talk to you in the morning.
All right.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I have a
Second?
motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any objections or abstentions?
Craig wants to stay.
Craig doesn't want it to end.
He's not saying a word.